On April 30, 1945, just before taking his own life, Adolf Hitler and his mistress Eva Braun burned all their documents, pictures, and everything. Hitler wanted nothing to be left behind after him. At that time, no one knew what had happened inside the bunker before Hitler's death. But now, 70 years later, due to a French officer, Commandant Raymond Rose, who is no longer alive, and a private collector, some new political and personal documents of Hitler have surfaced. These unique documents, now revealed for the first time, provide a deeper understanding of some of the most crucial moments from Hitler's final days. What was the atmosphere inside the bunker? Why did Hitler marry Eva Braun just 24 hours before his death? Which close associate betrayed him in the last 10 days of his life? When was the decision made to take his own life? And most importantly, what was the key piece of evidence that led the Allied forces to confirm that the dead body was indeed Hitler's?
Meine Arbeit für richtig hältst, ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin.
Viewers, after Hitler's death, everyone was trying to see and understand the bunker. On November 25th, 1945, Commandant Raymond Rose, a French officer, entered in the bunker. There were 26 steps leading down into a dark room. Inside, he saw a dimly lit, filthy chamber, scattered papers everywhere, overturned furniture, and melted candle wax covering the surfaces. Rose discovered documents that shed new light on Hitler's final days. These documents reveal that until his last moments, Hitler remained firm on his decision and sought victory even in his own death. Just 10 days before Hitler's death, the dream of Nazi Germany, once envisioned as a force to rule the world, had now faded into nothing more than a lost illusion. Hitler's empire, once one of the most powerful in the world and a thorn in the side of Western powers, was now counting its final moments. Berlin, the heart of Hitler's dreams and the center of his power, had turned into a pile of rubble. Everywhere there was destruction, fear, and the stench of death. Allied forces' bombs rained down relentlessly, and the Red Army was now just 100 kilometers away. Hitler, who had once hunted down his enemies, was now on the verge of becoming a hunted man himself, hiding in the darkness of a bunker. This was no ordinary bunker. It lay 7 meters underground near the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Designed by Albert Speer, Hitler's personal architect, this bunker was built to be highly fortified and bomb-proof. This bunker was originally built in 1936, but as Allied bombings grew more intense in 1943 and 1944, it was further reinforced to withstand greater destruction. In German, this bunker was called the Führerbunker. Führer means leader, making it the leader's bunker. This was the very place where Adolf Hitler, the man who once dreamed of ruling the world, was now in hiding. And this was where he would spend the final moments of his life. The atmosphere inside the bunker was overwhelmingly depressing: thick concrete walls, an eerie silence, a cold and numbing environment, and an ever-present darkness that seemed to swallow everything whole. This bunker was like a labyrinth, filled with narrow corridors and small, suffocating rooms that created an overwhelming sense of claustrophobia. Hitler had a private space within the bunker consisting of 3 rooms. One of them was a meeting room, where he held military operation briefings twice a day. His mistress, Eva Braun, had a small separate room of her own, and the two shared a single bathroom. The atmosphere inside the bunker was filled with depression and fear. Being underground, it relied on a mechanical ventilation system for air, which ran constantly, creating an unending noise. This noise wasn't just physically unsettling, it became a form of mental torture for those trapped inside. In his final 10 days, Hitler wasn't just broken physically, but also mentally. He had developed Parkinson's disease, which caused his hands to tremble uncontrollably. To hide his condition, he would often keep his left hand in his pocket or position it in a way that concealed his weakness from others. In his final 10 days, Hitler's hand trembled constantly, and even walking became difficult for him. According to doctors, during these last days, his face had turned so pale and exhausted that he looked nearly 15 years older than his actual age. Every officer who met him inside the bunker was shocked to see his deteriorating condition. Even Hitler's personal doctor, Theodor Morell, administered daily glucose and vitamin injections in an attempt to keep him stable. But none of it was enough to restore his failing health. Hitler losing control over his own hand was the biggest sign of his declining morale. Life inside the bunker had become unbearably monotonous. Every morning, a military meeting was held where his generals briefed him on the worsening situation in Berlin. The news of losing control over the city bit by bit was driving Hitler into frustration. Distrust was deeply ingrained in Hitler's nature. He never trusted anyone easily. And now, as defeat loomed closer, his paranoia only grew stronger. This was why, even in his final days, Hitler remained paranoid that one of his generals might betray him. And in the end, that fear turned into reality. As the last days approached and everyone in the bunker was thinking of escaping, Eva Braun chose to stay by Hitler's side. She had been his mistress for 13 years. Though they were never officially married, she lived with him inside the bunker. Experts believe that staying in the bunker with Hitler was Eva Braun's own stubborn decision. And perhaps she was also one of Hitler's greatest weaknesses. Eva was a romantic and emotional woman who wanted to stay with Hitler until the very end. Some of her letters written to her friends were later discovered. These letters provided rare insights into her private life with Hitler. Eva's only purpose in life was to be with Hitler. In one of her letters, she wrote, "This place is extremely terrifying, but I find myself content because the Führer himself stands with me." Inside the bunker, Eva's daily routine was extremely limited. She spent most of her time in her room, arranging her photographs, or sitting with Hitler, drinking coffee. But one thing that becomes clear from her letters is that Eva Braun felt incredibly lonely. Her letters don't just reflect her love and loyalty, they also reveal her fear and isolation. Outside the bunker, the situation was turning into a complete war zone. In the last 10 days, Berlin had become a battlefield. Allied bombers were relentlessly dropping bombs day and night. Meanwhile, the Red Army, the Soviet Union's military, was only a few kilometers away, fighting Hitler's army at the borders of Berlin. Despite having around 900 tanks and nearly 500,000 German soldiers to defend Berlin, Hitler's army was collapsing rapidly. The man who once dreamed of ruling here for 1,000 years was now witnessing his empire crumble before his eyes. The people of Berlin were hiding in bunkers and under rooftops, desperately trying to survive the relentless bombardment. But on the other hand, the radio was still broadcasting nothing but Nazi propaganda and music, trying to mask the inevitable defeat. Soon, the Red Army soldiers overpowered the German forces on the outskirts of Berlin. One German soldier later recalled that when he returned to the city, he could hardly recognize it. Berlin was nothing but a massive pile of rubble. This was the moment when even the German army began to see the end of Hitler's rule. Just days before Hitler's death, another dramatic event unfolded. Hermann Göring, the chief of the German Air Force and one of Hitler's closest allies, revealed his ambition to seize power. Hitler had entrusted Göring with several high-ranking positions. In 1933, he made him the head of the Air Ministry. By 1935, Göring became the commander-in-chief of the German Air Force. In 1936, he was put in charge of the 4-year plan, designed to boost Germany's economy. And finally, in 1941, Hitler officially named Hermann Göring as his successor and deputy, meaning that after Hitler, it was Göring who was supposed to take control. Göring believed that since Hitler was trapped in Berlin, the leadership should now be in his hands. He sent a telegram to Hitler, stating that if Hitler was no longer able to make decisions, he should officially transfer power to him. Upon reading the telegram, Hitler, who was already deeply depressed, flew into a rage. He immediately stripped Göring of all his positions, declared him a traitor, and ordered his arrest. Later, Hermann Göring was captured and sentenced to death. However, just hours before his execution, he took poison and ended his own life. On one hand, the Red Army was closing in on Berlin, and on the other, Hitler's closest ally had betrayed him. The pressure of these events pushed Hitler to do something he had never imagined before. It was April 29, 1945. Hitler gathered the people around him and declared that the time had come. At 1 a.m. that night, he officially married his longtime mistress, Eva Braun. The ceremony took place inside the bunker in the presence of just 2 or 3 officers. After the wedding, Hitler summoned his secretary and dictated his final will. In his own words, Hitler wrote, "Eva and I have chosen death. For us, death is better than the humiliation of surrender." Unfortunately, this marriage lasted only a single day. On April 30, 1945, at around 3 p.m., Hitler poisoned his beloved dog Blondie and then went into his room with Eva. Exactly 24 hours after their wedding, both ended their lives inside that very room. Hitler shot himself with a pistol, while Eva took a cyanide capsule, embracing death by his side. The bunker staff had already been given strict instructions. As soon as Hitler and Eva died, their bodies were taken to the courtyard and set on fire. Hitler wanted to leave no trace behind. Before their deaths, both had burned important documents and photographs, and in the end, he even ordered his own body to be destroyed. This proves that until his last breath, Hitler refused to surrender to his enemies. He didn't want Soviet soldiers to capture his body and display it as a trophy to the world. That's why he ordered his own body to be burned. By the time the Red Army reached the bunker, all they found were charred remains. It was only after extensive investigation, by analyzing Hitler's dental samples, that they confirmed the remains truly belonged to him. Hitler had a strong hatred for visiting the dentist. Because of this, he had a unique gold bridge made to cover his decayed teeth. It was this gold bridge that ultimately helped in identifying his body after death.